Hey guys, today we're going to go over the proper way to set up all your dies to load 9mm. Um, right here we've got the decapping and sizing die. You can tell by the decapping pin, and it will also say what it is on the die itself. The next one is going to be the powder pass-through die, which this one happens to be made by Lee. It's just going to be a little bit easier for us to set up and use on this machine, since we're treating this machine as a single stage. The next one, this is actually a Hornady setup. It's a micrometer adjustment, so you can make fine-tune adjustments on the fly once the die is already locked down. And then finally, this is just your Dillon crimp die that will go in station 4. So we'll go ahead and get started. It's a pretty simple process. So you'll have station 1, station 2, station 3, and station 4. So station 1 is going to be your sizing and decapping. Then it's going to go over to your powder die. Thirdly, it's going to go to your bullet seating. And then finally, you'll have your crimp. So to set your first die, you always want to make sure that you have the lock nut backed off out of the way. Go ahead and run the handle down, which will bring your shell plate up to its highest position. We're just going to put the die in. And we're just going to screw it all the way down until you feel it touch the shell plate. You can look over on the side and see that it's hitting the top of the shell plate, as well as you'll feel that resistance. Once you feel that, we'll just back off like a quarter turn. So you always want to make sure to pay attention where your die is at, keeping in mind that your die is one piece and this lock nut is separate. So figure out where your die is at, make note of it, and then you just want to back off a quarter turn. So all we're doing is backing it off just a touch so that it's not touching the shell plate. Being that these are carbide dies, that carbide ring inside can crack and break if it's touching the shell plate, and then the shell plate has too much pressure on it. So now that we've backed it off a quarter, just hold the die, and you want to tighten that lock nut down. Just give it a nice turn. It's locked down. That die is set. Moving on to station 2, we're going to use the powder through die. Just go ahead, again, you want to back that lock nut off all the way just to get it out of the way so you're not having to mess with it. And you just want to go ahead and screw this down. Okay, so screw it down most of the way. Again, it's not going to hit. So now we can go ahead and take our piece of brass. This is just a 9mm. It's been shot, cleaned, ready to go. So we're going to take it, we're going to slide it into station 1 over here. We're going to run it down, push the handle all the way down. At the same time, you'd hear the decapping pin going off, and then this is spring loaded to help kick the primer out. Get the tray for the primer so it doesn't fall on the floor. And as you run it down, it's going to drop that primer out. So if I take that out now, it's deprimed it and it's sized it and it's ready to go. Just to get it ready for the powder, we can go ahead and take a spent primer. We're just going to put it in backwards just to fill that up, and then that'll give us a smooth surface on the inside so that when we do go to put powder in, you don't have to worry about any getting stuck actually inside the primer anvil. You don't have to do this, but it's just something that we do. So we can go ahead and slide that over in there. Slide it in there, and then you're just going to push the handle forward and seat the primer. So now that's backwards. But when we go to use powder and put it in and check our charges and all that, it just makes it a little bit more consistent. So I'll go ahead and slide it back in station 1. I'm going to go ahead and advance it to station 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up this die. So we'll go ahead and run the handle all the way down. Continue to screw this die down till you feel it touch. So right now it's touching the top of that. But being that this is a powder through die and it also bells your case, now we need it to actually bell the case. So we're going to go ahead and we'll just give it like one full turn to see where that puts us. There's a half and there's a 1. Then again, just hold your die as you tighten down the lock nut. I'm just going to do this finger tight just to hold it in place while we're messing with it to see how much it bells it. So go ahead and run the handle back down. You'll feel just a touch of resistance. Go ahead and pull this pin out. And you can kind of run your finger over it. One turn, you're not really going to feel too much. So we'll go ahead and back that off. We'll go one more turn. And that's tight. Go ahead and run it through again. Feel a little bit more resistance. And this time, if you actually run your finger up, now you're going to feel just a little bit of a lip on there. So what we'll do is we'll take, this is the 147 grain bullet that we're going to be using. It's a berry or extreme bullet. And as you can see, it just drops in there enough so that it doesn't fall over. It just holds it in place. You don't want to overdo this because you're just working the brass more than you need to. You just want to have enough just so that bullet drops in. Just so it sits there. When you set it in there, it'll hold it in place once we get over here to the bullet seating station. So now that is properly set up. So you can just lock that down. And actually there's an O-ring in there, so whether you do it by hand right now, I'm just going to do it by hand for this purpose, but ultimately if you're setting this up completely and you're going to be loading on it continuously, you want to go ahead and lock that down.